All right, Rabbi say good morning. Let's begin. Today's daf is Kuf Yud Dalid, 114, and we are picking up on the last line of Kuf Yud Gimel Amud Beis, last line of 113b. I want to thank Yehuda for giving the shir yesterday, and again, obviously he has some incredible schus to get the one daf of Agarata in the entire Masechah of Zevachim, Baruch Hashem. But let's begin. So remember we left off in the Mishnah, or say the Gemara picks up with him with the Mishnah Rova V'Nirva. So remember again, just to orient ourselves a little bit over here as to what's happening. The Mishnah quoted two different psukim where we learn sources, where we learn ultimately exemptions for shchutei chutz. So in the first grouping in the Mishnah, it was paraduma, what the Mishnah calls paras chatos, sir hamishtalech, which were offered up outside of the Beis Hamikdash, or outside of the Mishkan for that matter. So the Mishnah says that one is pater for shchutei chutz in those situations. Why? The Gemara quoted the pasuk of Ve'el Pesach Oel Moed Lo Heviu. If you did not bring a carbon to the entrance of the Oel Moed. So the Mishnah commented on that. Kol she'ein roi lava Pesach Oel Moed ein chayav alav. Whatever is not fit to come to the entrance of the Oel Moed, you're not chayiv for. So therefore, paraduma, so sira mishtaleach, which are not karbanos, which are offered up inside of the Beis Hamikdash. So if you shech them outside, ultimately again you're not chayiv for shchutei chutz. Then the Mishnah goes into a second grouping. The second grouping is rova v'nirva, which is an animal that sodomizes or is sodomized. Muktzah, ne'evad, muktzah means set aside for avodah zarah, ne'evad, worshipped for avodah zarah, mechir, sold for a dog, esnon, a harlot payment, kilayim, treifa, yotzei dofen, all of these cases, that if you offer them up b'chutz, you are going to be pater. And the Gemara quotes the pasuk of lifnei mishkan Hashem. Now, when I say it quotes the pasuk, it's actually the same exact pasuk. It's just a latter phrase in that same pasuk. And the Gemara says, lifnei mishkan Hashem, if bring it before the mishkan of Hashem, kol she'en aroi lavo lifnei mishkan Hashem ein chayav alav. Anything that is not fit to be brought before the Mishkan of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're not chayav for shechting it on the outside. So the obvious shayla the Gemara is going to grapple with over here is why can't this second grouping be learned from the first phrase? Why do you need a second phrase of Name Mishkan Hashem ultimately to exclude this second group? Says the Gemara. So again, Kuf Yud Gimel Amud Beis, last line, 113b, last line. So Gemara says, I don't understand. In the case of Rova and Nirva specifically, so we'll say in the case of the animal that was sodomized or did sodomize, it can't be offered up as a carbon. So therefore the Gemara Mishnah tells me that if you shecht it outside of the Beis Hamikdash, so you are not chayiv for shchutei chutz. Where do I learn that out from? The pasuk says, the pasuk says, lifnei mishkan Hashem. So asks the Gemara, I don't understand. Why can't I learn it out from the original exclusion of Ve'el Pesach Oel Moed Lo Heviu? Why do I need the second phrase? To which the Gemara says, top of Kuf Yud Dalid. Bishlam Rova v'nirva. So we'll say, I understand. In the case of Rova v'nirva, mashkachas like dak dishin hu many kara v'hada ravo. So we'll say, so I understand. In the case of Rova v'nirva, you could have the following situation. You could have an animal that was originally consecrated, right? Originally consecrated, and then was sodomized. So we'll say, in a case like that, if you're just basing it on the pasuk of Al Pesach Oel Moed Lo Heviu, in fact, that animal was fit to be brought by the Oel Moed. That animal was fit for sacrificial service. I might have thought in a case like that, you would be chayiv therefore for shchutei chutz. Therefore, the additional phrase of Lifnei Mishkan Hashem comes to exclude an animal like that from the prohibition of shchutei chutz. To tell you that even an animal that once upon a time was fit, then became unfit, if you go ahead and you offer it up outside of the Mishkan, you are not chayiv for shchutei chutz. Elo. So we'll say, take a look at Rashi. Tap Rashi on Kuf Yud Daled Amud Aleph. The itzterich so b'shlam rova v'nirva mishkachas la itzterich lemeutinhu milahakriv dak deshinu v'hader nirva. I was about to say, if you have a case where the animal was originally sanctified and then became disqualified by being sodomized, kevan dechazu kvar v'idchu ru'uyim karinabur. So you will say, based on the first phrase, this animal was fit to be brought l'fnei Mishkan Hashem. This animal was fit to be brought as a carbon. So the Gemara says, v'chevan dechazu kvar v'idchu ru'uyim karinabur sheniru kvar v'lo mima'ati me'al pesach oel moed. Technically speaking, Rabbi say this animal is not excluded from the prohibition of shchutei chutz based on the phrase of al pesach or al moed. Why? Because at a certain point in time it was fit to be brought al pesach or al moed. Di ikala meimar hachi amar krav al pesach or al moed lo eviu b'shenira labo va'achar kach shachta b'chutz chayiv. Fine. So therefore the Gemara says over here, therefore the second phrase is necessary to teach you that even if an animal was fit, but subsequently became unfit, if you shechted it outside of the Beis HaMikdash, you will not be chayiv for shchutei chutz. Ella, muktzah v'nevad. So we'll say, but what do you do with the cases of muktzah v'nevad? Remember again, muktzah v'nevad is a case of an animal set aside for avodah zarah, or an animal actually worshipped for avodah zarah. So we'll say you can't set this up as the same case of rova v'nirba, because in the case of rova v'nirba, we'll say you could have an animal that was sanctified, but then subsequently became disqualified. If you have an animal that was sanctified for carbonic purposes, and then it was set aside for avodah zarah, or worshipped for avodah zarah, that does not disqualify the animal. Why not? Ein adam oser davar she'eino shalo. Because we'll say if the animal was sanctified as a carbon, then ultimately, again, even if someone actively worshipped it for avodah zarah or set it aside for avodah zarah, it doesn't make a difference. You can't change the designation of the animal once it has already been sanctified. So what's the case? To which the Gemara says, I'll tell you where. B'kadshim kalim, we could be talking about a case of an animal which was set aside. It was carbonically designated as kadshim kalim, va'ali b'Rabbi Yossi HaGalili. And it would reflect the view of Rabbi Yossi HaGalili, who holds that what? The Amar Kachim Kalim Mamon Bailuhu. We'll say Rabbi Yossi HaGalili is of the opinion that when it comes to Kachim Kalim, which are sacrificial animals that possess a lower level of sacrificial sanctity, they are still considered to be the property of the owner. A unique case or a unique situation where you have animals which have carbonic sanctity, but because it is a lower level of sanctity, at least in the view of Rabbi Yossi HaGalili, they are considered to be the property of the owner. So the Gemara says, this Sanya, the Gemara quotes the Brisa, this Sanya, the Brisa teaches us, Uma'ala ma'al ba'ashem. So we'll say, this is actually talking about, the pasuk over here is, Nefesh, excuse me, thank you, Nefesh kisechta, Uma'ala ma'al ba'ashem, v'kichesh ba'amito be'pikadon, o b'tshumas yad, o begezel, o eshek esamisa. So we'll say, so the pasuk over here is talking about as follows, where a person ultimately again denies liability regarding something. He's challenged in court that ultimately again he has possession of something that belongs to someone else. He denies the claim, subsequently admits it. The Brisa says, Umma'ala ma'al ba'ashem. What does that come to include? L'rabos kachim kalim. It ultimately again comes to include a case of kachim kalim. They're both saying if somebody is claimed, or if somebody is if somebody's brought to court claiming that they possess the kachim kalim of another person and they deny that claim, the denial of that claim is a kfiras mamon. It's considered to be a denial of a monetary claim, even though we're talking about a sacrificial item. Why? Because when it comes to kachim kalim are considered to be the mamon of the owner, considered to be the monetary possession of the owner. Shein mamono. So I'll say, look at Rashi just a moment. It's actually not yet. So ma'ala ma'abashem l'rabos kachim kalim shein mamono div Rabbi Yossi HaGalili. So we'll say, so according to Rabbi Yossi HaGalili, kachim kalim, as much as they are a sacrificial entity, bless you, are considered to be the owner, the monetary possession of the owner. Therefore, hilchach. So we'll say, now watch this. So therefore, the Gemara suggests as follows: you could have a case of kachim kalim, which are sacrificial in nature. In other words, it's a carbon, but according to Rabbi Yossi HaGalili, it is the possession of the owner, and therefore, you know, say in that kind of case, if the owner were to go ahead and worship it as avodah zarah, or set it aside as avodah zarah, because it is his mammon, technically, he could change its designation. So this would be a case of an animal which was, according to the first pasuk, right, which was, technically speaking, satisfies the criteria, ve'al pesach o al moed lo eviu, so it satisfies the criteria of an animal that is fit to come to the entranceway of the Oel Moed. Therefore, I need the second phrase of Lifnei Mishkan Hashem to teach me that if what? That if it became disqualified, either by being muktzah or ne'evad, and I subsequently go ahead and worship it, offer it outside of the Beis HaMikdash, I will not be chayiv for shchutei chutz. So let me just explain this outside for just a moment. So in other words, what the Gemara is coming to teach me is as follows. The first exclusion of the Mishnah, of the what we call the El Pesach or El Moed Lo Heviu, which teaches me that animals that are not fit animals that are not fit to come to the entrance of the Oel Moed, are not sacrificially fit, are not chayiv for shchutei chutz. What is that? What is that grouping? That's talking about animals which were never sacrificially fit. For example, para aduma, seir la'azazel, which are animals which have some level of sanctity, but were never destined ultimately to come into the Beis HaMikdash for sacrificial purposes. Animals like that, if you shech them outside of the Beis HaMikdash, you will be pater for their offering. The Mishnah then comes to teach me a second grouping. What's the second grouping, Rabbi? These are animals which once upon a time were sacrificially fit, then became sacrificially unfit. How did they become sacrificially unfit? They sodomized, were sodomized, worshipped for Avodah Zarah, set aside for Avodah Zarah, and now if you were to take those same animals and offer them up outside of the Beis HaMikdash, you also would not be chayiv for shchutei chutz. Was there in the first category and the second category? In the first category, they were never sacrificially fit. In the second category, they were sacrificially fit, became sacrificially unfit. Without the second phrase, I would have thought that once something was sacrificially fit, even if it is currently unfit, I would be chayiv for shchutei chutz. Kamash malon, that we look at the status of the animal now, that even if it once upon a time was sacrificially fit, but it is now sacrificially unfit, therefore one is not chayiv for shchutei chutz. So the Gemara says, I understand in a case of rova v'nirva, how the animal becomes unfit. What about the case ultimately again of muktzah and ne'evad? If an animal was pledged as a carbon, I will say, so even if somebody goes ahead, if just a moment, you set aside your animal as a chatos, someone comes along and worships it as avodah zarah, they can't change the status of that animal. It's already sanctified. So how can you ever have an animal that is sacrificially fit and then becomes unfit because it's worshipped or designated for avodah zarah? And the answer is a specific case of what? Kadshim kalim, according to Rabbi Yossi Haglili. Because Rabbi Yossi Haglili holds that kadshim kalim is still considered to be the monetary possession of the owner. If it's the monetary possession of the owner, then what? Then the owner does have the ability to impact its status. In a case of kadshim kalim, which was then subsequently worshipped as avodah zarah by its owner, it does in fact become sacrificially unfit. And therefore, again, what? If you were to take that very same animal, this animal Nebuch has been through a lot, right? It was a carbon, then it became avodah zarah, and now what's the icing? What's the icing on top? It's now shechted outside of the Beis HaMikdash. So you would have thought that so again, therefore the Mishnah teaches me that such an animal, one is not chayiv for shchutei chutz. Good. So the Gemara says, now to group this all together, muktzah v'ne'evad, hilchach, rova v'nirva, dvar erva. So I'll say in the case of rova v'nirva, so if I have an animal that was designated as a carbon and subsequently was either sodomized or did sodomize, so that's a dvar erva. And the dvar erva status, now that the animal is quote unquote a dvar erva, so that dvar erva status devolves upon the animal even after it was designated as a carbon, rendering it unfit for sacrificial purposes, and therefore again, if you were to offer it up outside of the Beis HaMikdash, you would not be chayiv. Muktzah v'ne'evad. So we'll say in the case of muktzah v'ne'evad, there would be a disqualification of avodas kochavim, and I will say what's the case where that ultimately again would exempt the person from shchutei chutz, bekachim kalim. So that's a very specific case ultimately again where the carbonic designation was originally kachim kalim, which is mamon bailim, which although it was a carbon, now because it is the property of the owner has the ability to change its status, and therefore again, if you were to go ahead and worship it for avodah zarah, it would become disqualified, and therefore again, if you were to subsequently offer it up outside the Beis HaMikdash, you would be pater. Esnan umechir kilayim yotzei dofen. So we'll say, what about the subsequent cases? Esnan, Rabosai, remember, is an animal that is given to a harlot as payment for her services. Mechir is an animal that's sold for a dog. Kilayim means crossbreeding. Yotzei Dofen means a cesarean section. So we'll say, so where do these cases, I mean, so remember, the Mishnah said, in all of these cases, we'll say, if you offered this up outside of the Beis HaMikdash, you would be pater ultimately, again, for shchutei chutz. Now, what's the case? In other words, we have to be dealing over here with a case where the animal was originally sanctified, and then these statuses ultimately, again, were conferred upon the animal. So we'll say, so where can you come up with a case where the animal was originally sanctified and then took on this status? To which the Gemara says, Bivlados Kotshim. I'll tell you about where this comes up. This comes up ultimately again where we're talking about the status. These statuses are conferred upon the animal when the animal is in utero. So you have ultimately again a carbon. The carbon is pregnant, the kachim is pregnant, and ultimately again you go ahead and you convey the fetus to the harlot as her payment. Or you go ahead and you barter the fetus ultimately again for a dog, or the fetus is kilayim, or the fetus is so in all of these cases, in this situation, the status is not upon the mother, but the status is upon the fetus. And therefore, again, about like kasavar vlade kachim bahav yasan heim kidoshim. And the time of this Mishnah holds that what? That I will say when it comes to vlade kachim, when it comes to animals born to sacrificial items, to sacrificial animals, the status ultimately again of a sacrificial item is not conferred to the fetus until its birth. Take a look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says over here, Esna no mechir kilayim v'yozedofen bivlados kachim kilomar hanach deitzrechinhu lemeotinim elahakriv karban v'lo nafki me'al pesach al karchach b'sheniru kvar mairi lo meshkachas ela bivlados kachim v'ira lehu psul b'may iman. So the case about say all these subsequent cases is where the particular carbonic psul was conferred upon the fetus while it is still in utero. Deniru lava pesach amay kodem shnasu esnan umechir in balhakiv v'sima. So we'll say so essentially just to close out this section, what the Gemara posits is as follows. There are two different groupings in the Mishnah. Remember again, what's the common denominator in the Mishnah? The animals mentioned in the Mishnah each have their own level of sanctity, yet interestingly enough, if you shech them outside of the Beis HaMikdash, you are not chayev for shchutei chutz. In the first category, what are we talking about? What's in the first category? Just simply para aduma and sira mishtalech. So if you were to take that para aduma and you were to shecht it outside of the Beis HaMikdash, or the sira mishtalech and to shecht it outside of the Beis HaMikdash, you will not be chayev for that. Why? The Mishnah quotes the pasuk, ve'al pesach ol amoy lo heviu. You're only chayiv for shechting shchutei chutz if it was fit to come into the Beis HaMikdash. So I'm not chayiv for paraduma sir mishleach. Why? Why not? Why not? Because you're not karbanos that are offered up inside the Beis HaMikdash. That's fine. Then the Mishnah brings a second grouping. The way the Gemara understands now that second grouping of Bosai is what? These are animals which were originally sacrificially fit. Then something happened to them which renders them unfit. There's a second phrase in that same pasuk that says Lifnei Mishkan Hashem, which teaches me that only animals which are presently sacrificially fit are subject to the prohibition of shchutei chutz. But if they were once upon a time fit, then became what? Unfit. If you shech them outside of the Beis HaMikdash, you are not chayiv for shchutei chutz. And all the Gemara just did was to show how each of these cases come up. Some of them are a little bit more straightforward than others. For example, Rova Vinirva, you have an animal that was designated as a carbon. It was sodomized or did sodomize. It is now puzzle. It is now ultimately again invalid for being offered up as a carbon. So that's an example of something that was fit is now no longer fit. Based on the first phrase brought down in the Mishnah, I would have thought that if it was once upon a time fit, once you are once upon a time fit, then what? Then maybe you are forever subject to the prohibition of shchutei chutz. Kamash Malon, the Torah brings in another phrase of Lifnei Mishkan Hashem to teach you that even if you were fit, but then became unfit, you are not subject to the prohibition of shchutei chutz. And the Gemara just shows ultimately again how each of these cases unfold. Rova Venirva is the easy one. The rest of them apparently again, so muktzah and ne'eva, the avodah cases could be a kachim kalim according to Rabbi Yossi Haglili, and all of the rest of the cases are statuses which ultimately again are conferred upon the unborn fetus of an animal that is already sacrificially sanctified. So therefore, I will say we end off with these two dramatic categories. categories. You are not chayiv for shchutei. The good news is, what's the good news? Let's always start with the good news. What's the good news? You're not chayiv for shchutei chutz. That's the good news. What are the two categories? Category one are animals which just were never intended to be offered up as karbanos. They have some level of what we'll call sacrificial sanctity, like a paraduma sir, but they were never destined to be offered up as karbanos. If that's the case, and that's subject to shchutei chutz. Category two are animals which once upon a time were sacrificially fit, then became unfit, and the Mishnah teaches me that if I go ahead and I sacrifice them outside of the Beis HaMikdash in their unfit state, I am not chayav for shchutei chutz. Beautiful. Bali mumin osov esmenos. So we'll say, remember again, now the Mishnah talks about as follows. The Mishnah records an ongoing machlokus in the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Shimon regarding what they're both saying, regarding what happens if you offer up karbanos outside of the Beis HaMikdash that are currently unfit, but what? Will ultimately be fit. So for example, the Gemara, so Rabbi Shimon says, if at any point in time in the future it's going to become fit, so when you offer it up now outside of the Beis HaMikdash, although you will not be chayiv kares for shchutei chutz, you will be in violation of what? Of olo saseh. That's Rabbi Shimon Shita. The Rabbanan say if it's not currently fit, even if it will be fit sometime later on, you're not chayiv for shchutei chutz. So we'll say, so the Mishnah brings down a number of different instances where they have this machlokes. Case number one was by Ba'ali Mumin Ovrin. What happens if the animal has a mum, but it's what's called a mum over, right? A mum over. So I remember when I started in the Rabbanos. Well, actually, it's not an important story. Okay, good. So, all right, fine. I'll tell you. So I was once somewhere with someone who was many years my senior, and I guess he was surprised that I was young. He said, "How old are you?" I was in my 20s at the time. He said, "Well, it's very young to be in the Rabbanos." But he said, "Don't worry, youth, it's a mum over." So I'm sure he said to me, good. I said, "Thank you for the chizuk." Okay, so I'll say, so case number one ultimately again was with a mum over, right? So again, according to the Rabbanon, if you go ahead and you shecht a carbon outside of the Beis HaMikdash, and the carbon has a mum over, which Rabbi say means ultimately a blemish that is going to heal, temporary blemish. The Rabbanan say you're not chay for shchutei chutz. Rabbi Shimon says you are chay for shchutei chutz. That was next case. The other case again, Rabbi say was the same thing with Turim b'nei Yonah. The next case we again remember was osove es beno. Zman. So we'll say it's the same machlokes over and over and over. So the Gemara is essentially going to ask, I don't understand. I mean, I get it. Rabbi Shimon says that halacha l'maisa, whenever again the animal will be fit at some future time, if you shecht it now, even though it's unfit, you're still chayiv you're still in violation of a lo saseh. We'll discuss what lo saseh that is in just a little bit. The Rabbanan say you're not. So Gemara asks, why do I need all the cases? Utzrichi. I'll tell you why we need all the cases, says the Gemara. Utzrichi. Ditana ba'ali mumin. Because if it would have just said the case of ba'ali mumin, so mishum demi'isi. I would have thought Rabbi say that the reason why the Rabbanan say that you're not chayav for shchutei chutz in that case is why? Because it's mos. Because Rabbi say it's disgusting to offer up a bal mum, even if it's a bal mum over, and therefore again, ultimately again, that's why the Rabbanan go ahead and pater you for offering it up outside. However, aval torin delo me'isi ema demodulei Reb Shimon. Rabbi say in the case of the torin, which are the turtle doves, even if they're not yet the right age or they aged out, where it's not disgusting if you offer it up, I would have thought that they would be molded to Reb Shimon in that case, that you should be in violation of a lo saseh if you offer it up outside the Beis HaMikdash. V'tana sorin mishum de lo chazi v'itchu. Or if it would have just said the case of the Torin, which are too old and therefore they're totally unfit for sacrificial service. Aval ba'ali mumin de'ichzu v'itchu. But both say the case of ba'ali mumin, once upon a time, what? They were fit and then became unfit. Ema demodelahu Reb Shimon l'Rab. Ema demodelahu Reb Shimon l'Rabbanan. I would have thought Reb Shimon would agree with the Rabbanan in that case, and would say that you're not even chayv lo saseh. V'tana hani tarti mishum de psula de gufayu. Or if we would have just said these first two cases, because Rabbi say there is an inherent psul in the guf of the animal. Aval osov espeno de psula me alma kaasi. But Rabbi say in the case of osov espeno, which means you can't shech the mother and its child on the same day, there's no inherent psul in the animal. I would have thought, I would have thought that in that case, the Rabbanan would agree with Rabbi Shimon that if you shechted it outside of the Beis Hamikdash, you would be chayv lo saseh. Therefore, tzricha. I will say, so the idea over here is, like we see many times, that the Mishnah brings down all the different cases because each of them have their own unique halachic peculiarity, and because of that, they all need to be stated. So we'll say, so bottom line, each of the cases are unique and different. Therefore, the Mishnah states all of them. But we are still left ultimately again with this fundamental machlokes between the Rabbanan and Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon saying that any case where the animal ultimately will be fit at some future time, even if it's not fit now, if you shecht it outside of the Beis Hamikdash, there will be shchutei chutz liability. Now, granted, that liability is capped. What is it capped at, Rabbosai? What is it capped at? It's capped at a lav and not kares. But there is still liability nevertheless, versus the Rabbanon who say no. If the animal is not fit, then by definition, even if it will be fit, it doesn't make a difference. We don't care about what will be, we care about what? What is now. And therefore, again, if there is no present liability, you're not chayav for shchutei chutz at all. So, and then the Mishnah says it as a klal. After the Mishnah gives all of the examples, or after the Mishnah says all of the cases where the Rabbanon and Rabbi Shimon disagree, the Mishnah then says the Kal Rabbi Shimon Omer, I'm just reading the Mishnah, Kol Shuroi Lavo La'achar Zman, any animal which will be sacrificially fit after some amount of time, Harei Zeh Belo Sa'aseh Ve'ein Bo Kares. You are in violation of a lo saseh prohibition for offering it outside of the Beis Hamikdash, but good news is there's no kares. The Chum say no. Shchutei chutz is a package, and therefore again, kol she'in bo kares, in bo lo saseh. If there's no kares, there's also no lo saseh. So says the Gemara, my time is Rabbi Shimon. So we'll say, where does Rabbi Shimon get this? Where? So Mishnah tells me the klal, but the Mishnah doesn't tell me where Rabbi Shimon's shita evolves from. So my time is Rabbi Shimon. Here we go. Am Rabbi Eloi, Am Rabbi Shlakish, Damakra. So this is actually quite interesting. Lo sasun kechol asher anachnu osim po hayom. So we'll say, interestingly enough, the Gemara learns it out, ultimately again, from Moshe Rabbeinu in next week's parasha. Lo sasun kechol asher anachnu osim po hayom. Now Moshe Rabbeinu is Saint Klal Yisrael is, when you go into Eretz Yisrael, you are not going to be able to do everything that we are doing here today. Now, where is here today? Here today, of course, is Me'ever LaYarden, on the other side of the Jordan. But more importantly, what's happening? There is an established Mishkan. There is an established Mishkan. So Moshe was saying, when you go into, remember our timeline from the previous Mishnah? When we go into Eretz Yisrael, where is the first place that the Mishkan is established? Gilgal, right? Remember again, Gilgal. How long in Gilgal? 14 years. Right, remember again, the 7 years of conquering the land, the 7 years of dividing the land. After that, the Mishkan goes Shiloh, right? Shiloh for 369 years. So again, so what Moshe seems to be saying is when you go into Eretz Yisrael and you set there's no reason why you should know that. It's in that body of Torah called Navi, which again is for girls. So that's we're exempt from that, Baruch Hashem. That's not for us. So again, we learn Gemara. Remember, the idea over here is Moshe was telling them, when you go into Eretz Yisrael and you go ahead and you set up the Mishkan in Gilgal, you will not be able to do in Gilgal all the things that we're doing today. Now look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says, Lo sasun kinabose. This is actually amazing. By the way, I just want to point out what's really amazing over here to see is this is one of these machloksim, which is a historical machlokes, which is a historical machlokes. I want to say, just to understand, by the way, if you want to appreciate this journey, so if you're in Eretz Yisrael, and you take the Jordan Valley Road, driving up to the north. So there's a stop there called Ras Al Yahud. So Ras Al Yahud. So unfortunately, it is a neglected Jewish site, but it's becoming ever more popular. If you go to Ras Al Yahud, so you'll see there a lot of Christian missionaries, or a lot of Christians, because they say supposedly it's the site of Yashka's baptism. But we also begin to piece together historically that it is most probably also the site where Klal Yisrael crossed over the Yarden. And I will say the reason why it's amazing is because if you imagine it for just a moment, if you go straight, meaning straight line from Ras Al Yahud, straight line, you hit the city of Yericho. which is quite amazing. That pretty much is most probably the site where Klal Yisrael. Now, again, today when you go there, it doesn't really engender the same level of awe because the Jordan River is much smaller than what it was when Klal Yisrael went ahead and crossed over it. Right, but remember again, it once upon a time was a major water source, like a major river. So say, but it's amazing to see. It's literally where they crossed over, went straight to Yericho. Gilgal is right there afterwards, and that's where they set up the Mishkan. So look at Rashi. So this is a historical machlokes. So Rashi is lo sasun. Rashi says b'sifri darishle b'tchilas bia saaretz hayom anu metaltlanes Mishkan. So Moshe Rabbeinu was saying to Klal Yisrael as follows: today we carry around the Mishkan with us. Va'anu ostrim bebama. So remember again, we'll say everyone agrees that when we were in the desert, from the time that the Mishkan was built, there was an Isser Bamos. You cannot build private altars in the desert. There was only one place to offer up karbanos, and that was in the Mishkan. Ve'einanu makrivin ela b'Mishkan. So in the desert, Moshe Rabbeinu is talking to Klal Yisrael. In the desert, we only worship, we only offer karbanos on the Mishkan. Lefichach kol karbanos ksherim lahakriv mishanavo le'eret yudal tzedem shel kivush v'chiluk anu mutarn bebama. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, listen, you're going to go into Eretz Yisrael. So remember, it was already understood, Rabbi say, that the Mishkan was only going to temporarily be in Gilgal. There was already a recognition, and Moshe was already preparing them. So when you go into Eretz Yisrael, you're going to set up the Mishkan temporarily for the 14 years of kibush and chiluk, of conquering and dividing up Eretz Yisrael. Now, during that time, Moshe Rabbeinu says, Bamos will become mutter. Remember again, Rabbi say, whenever the Mishkan is not centralized, Bamos are mutter. This is the great anomaly of the desert. Even though, again, the Mishkan, quote-unquote, was not centralized because we were moving around, this was the exception. The Mishkan was centralized because the camp always moved as a cohesive entity. And therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, there was an Isser Bamos. When we come into Eretz Yisrael, Moshe Rabbeinu tells them for the first 14 years, Bamos will be permitted. Therefore, lefichach, now watch this. Visham, bless you. Visham lo sasun kichol asher anachnu osimpo. Now remember, what does Moshe Rabbeinu say? He says to Klal Yisrael, when you go into Eretz Yisrael, so you will not be able to do all the things that we are doing here today. Now what does that refer to? Lahakriv chovos. We'll say that refers to the offering of obligatory offerings. Uma anu mutarin ba. So what are we permitted to do? Ish kavar yasher be'inav nidarim unidavos she'inon chov va'alav ela sheyashru be'inav liv snadev kilo basem ad ata ad shetavo ela menucha l'shilo shava b'shenechnastam la'aretz ba'avrachem esayardin adayin lo basem ela menucha. So we'll say this is actually absolutely amazing. So watch this. It says the Gemara. Let's go look at this. Amar Yishlakish Damakra lo sasun kechol asher anachnu osim po hayom. Moshe Rabbeinu tells Klal Yisrael, when you go into Gilgal and you set up the Beis HaMikdash there for the 14 years, 7 years of kibush, 7 years of chiluk. So ultimately, again, you will not be able to do there in Gilgal all the things that we're doing here today. What are we doing here today? Amar Lahu Moshe Yisrael, Ki Ailisu La'aretz. When you go into Eretz Yisrael for the first 14 years, Yesharos Takrivu, Chovos Lo Sakrivu. Moshe tells them, in Gilgal, I will say there's a Mishkan, but during that time, bamos are permitted as well. In the time when bamos are permitted, Rabbi said the only karbanos you're permitted to bring up are what? Nidarim and nidavos. Not obligatory offerings. Now, both say, now the incredible chiddush is what? Not obligatory offerings on bamos, and not obligatory offerings where? In Gilgal. Both say, this is amazing. According to Rabbi Shimon's model, historical model, so during the 14 years when the Mishkan was in Gilgal, there were no obligatory offerings that were brought. Only nidarim and nidavos. That's on your own personal altar, and that's on the communal bama, ultimately in Gilgal as well. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu means when he says, Lo sasun kechol asher anachnu osim po hayom. Ultimately, again, you will not be able to do in Gilgal, that which we are doing here today. What are we doing here today in the desert? What are we doing ultimately again in the Mishkan? Obligatory offerings. No obligatory offerings to be brought in Gilgal during the 14 years of kibush and chiluk. So the Gemara says, watch this. So the Gemara says, the Gilgal legabi Shilo mechosar zmanhu. They're both saying that this is interesting. So Gilgal. So what does this mean? So if you were to go ahead And ultimately, again, we'll actually look at Rashi for just a moment. Chovos lo sakrivu, Rashi says, ish shebachem la yakriv shum chova. Again, when it's Mishnah's in Gilgal, you can't bring any obligatory offerings. Fafida bama sibor. We'll say that it's true even if you bring it to the bama in Gilgal. Ad shetavo el hamenucha, until you come to the menucha, which ultimately is a reference to Shiloh. V'sakrivu. Alba, chovos de Gilgal muchusari zmanheim, ad ki yavo Shiloh, v'yikarvu sham, v'ka'amar rachmana lo sasu osam b'Gilgal, umashrum be'mam sibor be'mam siyachid, alma muchusari zman bama lo sasu. We'll say this is amazing. So therefore what? We'll say, if you were to bring a carbon, let's say you were to bring an obligatory carbon in Gilgal, we'll say, what would be the status there? That would be like bringing a carbon that is muchusar zman, wrong timing. Why is it wrong timing, Rabbi Hossein? Because you're just a little bit off. How off are you if you bring an obligatory carbon in Gilgal? How off are you? 14 years. And Rabbi Hossein, yeah, what does it say over here? Moshe Rabbeinu says, lo sasun kain. It is a lav. It is a lav. So it is a lav to go ahead and bring an obligatory carbon in Gilgal during the 14 years. Now, to bring a carbon in Gilgal effectively is to bring a carbon with wrong timing, what we call muchusar zman. And you see from here that there's a lav. From here, Rabbi Shimon says, anytime you bring a carbon with quote-unquote wrong timing, what we call muchusar zman, it's a lav. We'll say it's a very dramatic limud, that is mamish a historical limud. Just like you can't bring obligatory offerings in Gilgal, and if you do so, you're in violation of lo sasu kichol asher nachnu osim bo. Rabbi Shimon says this becomes the model of muchusar zman. Anytime you bring a carbon with wrong timing, ultimately again it is a lav. So says the Gemara. So v'gilgal gabi shil muchusar zmanu v'kamlu Moshe lo sasun. So we'll say, so from here you see Rabbi Shimon says that halacha l'maisa, if you go and you bring a carbon that is muchusar zman, ultimately again is us. So we'll say, just understand how Rabbi Shimon applies this. Rabbi Shimon takes, it's very dramatic, no? Yeah. Okay, maybe not. Right, but I think it's very dramatic. We'll say, because also again it's a window into Jewish history, which is so amazing. So Rabbi Shimon therefore says, understand Rabbi Shimon takes from this. Rabbi Shimon therefore says it's the same idea. If you were to take an animal, the halacha is you can't offer up an animal that is less than 8 days old as a carbon. If you were to take an animal that ultimately again is 6 days old and you were to offer it up, the Rabbanan would say pater. That's not shchutei chutz. Rabbi Shimon would say you're in violation of a lav. Why? Because I will say any carbon that is what we'll call time deficient is included under this umbrella lav of Moshe Rabbeinu of lo sasun kichol asher nachnu osim bo. Amar Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Yirmiyah says Rabbi Zera. Well, if that's the case, that it's a lav, then ihachi amud beis milka nami lilki. We'll say, I know you were thinking this as well. We're all thinking this. If that's the case that it's a lav, Rabbi, say then what? Shke malchus. According to Rabbi Shimon, if you go ahead and you offer up a time-deficient carbon outside, you should get malchus. If that's the case, Alama Am Rabbi Zera Hakasav Nitko La'aseh. Well, say if that's the case, then why did Rabbi Zera say that the Torah made this prohibition like a lav hanitak la'aseh, like a lav that is remedied by an aseh, which ultimately does not get malchus? And as Rabbi said, the Gemara is saying over here is at the end of the day, if it's really a lav, then you should get malchus. So why did Rabbi Zera say that essentially it's a lav that you don't get malchus for? To which the Gemara says, you're right, hani mili l'Rabbanon, l'Rabbi Shimon hachinami. To which the Gemara says, Rabbi say, you're absolutely right. Meaning, according to Rabbi Shimon, you would get malchus for this. It's only according to the Rabbanon, in the Shitas Rabbanon, who hold that there's no prohibition. Of course, you're not going to get malchus. But according to Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi say, ein achinami, it's a lav. And if you offer up shchutei chutz that are mechusarei zman, you will in fact get malchus. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, he says, Pnim de Gilgal legabi Shiloh ki chutz dami. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, I will say what? It's actually quite interesting as well. That Pnim de Gilgal, offering something up inside the Mishkan in Gilgal, is legabi Shiloh ki chutz dami. It's like offering it up b'chutz in Shiloh. Look at Rashi for just a moment. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar. So the Rabbi Shimon Nami lo lucky. Rav Nachman is saying the reason, even according to Rabbi Shimon who says that there's a lav, you still won't get malchus. Why not? Rabbi Shimon Nami lo lucky. I'm a chusar zman bifnim di Gilgal legabi Shiloh chutzu legabi chovas hoyel deino kasher lakravaso hilchach b'chutzu da ashkechan beilo sasim mishum israbam avalo bifnim. Fine. So we'll say so. Rav Nachman Yitzchak is just giving another reason why, even according to Rabbi Shimon, ultimately again, even though it is us, you still won't get malchus. Rabba Amar Tamid Shuvah. So we'll say, so therefore, first approach, first understanding of Shitas Rabbi Shimon Rabbi Osai is based on this idea that Moshe Rabbeinu is giving a lav. Lo sasun kechol asher anachnu osim po. You may not do in Gilgal like all that we are doing here today. Rabbi Shimon therefore holds that just like Gilgal is, so doing anything in Gilgal is like mechusar zman legabe Shiloh, and therefore again you see Moshe Rabbeinu giving a lav. Therefore, any time you go ahead and you offer something up that is mechusar zman, ultimately again you get a lav. Another approach, Rabbi Amar Tamid Rabbi Shimon Kedisanya. No, Rabbi Shimon's logic is from elsewhere, as we learned in the Brisa. Rabbi Shimon Aros is actually very interesting. Minayin l'zaveach Pesach bebamas yochid b'shas isra b'mashubalo saseh. So listen to this case. From where do we know that if one goes ahead and offers up Karban Pesach bebamas yochid on an individual bama, a private altar, b'shas isra habamos, at a time when bamos are asr. So I build a bama at a time when bamos are asr. We'll say whatever time in history, right? Remember again, there are multiple times in history that bamos are asr. But I build myself a bama at a time when bamos are asr, and I shecht the Karban Pesach on that bama. How do I know shubalo saseh? How do I know that I'm in violation of a lav? Talmud Lomar lo sucha lizboach esa pasach. The pasuk says ultimately again, I am not permitted to go ahead. You're not permitted to go and offer up the Karban Pesach. So we'll say, let's analyze this. Yochol af b'shas heter abamos kein. I might have thought that there would be an isser to go and shech Karban Pesach, even at a time when bamos were permitted. Talmud Lomar, therefore the pasuk says, be'echad sha'arecha. Therefore we'll say the pasuk says, in one of your gates. Lo amarti. So we'll say this is all the same pasuk. Lo sucha lizboach esa pasach be'echad sha'arecha. You are not permitted to offer up the Karban Pesach in one of your gates. We'll say, when is there a prohibition to offer up the Pesach on a bama? Lo amarti lecha ela b'shah shekol Yisrael nichnasin b'shar echad. We'll say, this is such an incredible idea. When is there an Isser bama for Karban Pesach? Only when all of Klal Yisrael goes in through one gate. What does it mean when Klal Yisrael goes in through one gate? The Gemara says, in other words, when there is a time of centralized service. Only when there is a time of centralized service and we're all going in through one gate to worship, that's when there is an Isser to offer up the Karban Pesach on a bama. Okay. Se'emas. So now we've established that what? That halacha l'maisa, if a person goes ahead and offers up the Karban Pesach on a bamas yachid, and a time when there is an Isser bamos, I'm over on a lo saseh. Fine. When is this Karban Pesach being offered? Emas. Inema achar chatzos. If you want to say that it's after chatzos, then avosai kares nami mechayiv. Not only am I in violation of a lo saseh avosai, but offering up the Karban Pesach on a bamas yochid at a time ultimately again when bamos are aser after chatzos on erev Pesach is a iser kares. Elalav kodem chatzos. Rather, Rabbi say, what is it talking about? It's before Chatzos. So now what do you see over here? What do you see over here? That ultimately, again, I'm offering up Karban Pesach on a Bamas Yochid at a time when Bamas Yochid is Aser. Before Chatzos, Rabbi say is what? Mechusar Zman. It's not the Zman. And yet what? I'm in violation of a Lo Saseh. Beautiful. What do you see from here? Says Reb Shimon. You see from here that any time you offer up a Karban outside of the Beis HaMikdash, and it is mechusar zman, you're in violation of a lo saseh. That's it. To which the Gemara says, no, not a good proof. I'll tell you why. Li'olam la'achar chatzos. No, it's not true. When is Karban Pesach being offered up, Rabosai? After chatzos. But one second. After chatzos is an Isser Kares. So what are you talking about? Ubishas heter abamos koi. What did Rabosai? No, this is actually talking about a time in history where bamos were mutter. Bamos were mutter. But the Brisa didn't say it. The Brisa explicitly said that it's being offered up at a time when bamos are aser. To which the Gemara says, "B'shas Isra bamos kamar iser bama lo hefter bama lachavero." But say, what are we talking about? It's a time where ultimately, again, it is aser to offer up this karban, but permitted to offer up other karban. So we'll say, what does that mean? Take a look at Rashi. Second wide line in Rashi: iser bama lo lekarban zu or zeh, excuse me. It is also to offer up this karban, but heter bama lachavero, li'ola u'lishlamim, the neder u'nedava, the seifa achikamar, yachal af b'shah shu muter bebama kigon kodim chatzos shu l'shlamim So we'll say, therefore again, the Gemara says as follows. Really what the Bryce is coming to teach us is the following. That even at a time when bamos are permitted, and you could offer up karbanos on a bama, we'll say, Karban Pesach never occurs on a bamas yachid. Karban Pesach never occurs on a bamas yachid. It's interesting halacha Rabbi say. In other words, whenever there's Karban Pesach, so meaning if there's a heter, whenever there's Karban Pesach must always be offered up on the bama gidola. Karban Pesach is never offered up on a bamas yachid. So therefore, Rabbi say, it turns out that last limud is not really a good source for Rabbi Shimon's halacha. Therefore, it appears that the source of Rabbi Shimon's halacha is really the original assertion, is really ultimately the statement of Reish Lakish. Lo sasun kichol asher anachnu osim po hayom. Moshe Rabbeinu telling Klal Yisrael, when you come into Eretz Yisrael, you cannot offer up communal offerings in Gilgal. And I will say to offer up communal offerings in Gilgal, I will say would be what? Would like being offering up communal offerings mechusarei zman, and yet you see that what? That it is a prohibition, that it is a lav. Therefore, again, it seems to be that the source of Shimon's halacha ultimately is based on the statement of Reb Shimon and is not learned out from this second source, ultimately of Rabbah. Good, says the Gemara, mechusar zman. So we'll remember again, the next thing Reb Shimon introduced to us is that mechusar zman could take on two different variations. There's mechusari zman in the karban, and there could be mechusari zman in the person. Mechusari zman in the karban, I will say, would be like an example of a karban that's offered up at 6 days old, as opposed to waiting the 8 days. Mechusari zman in the person could be, I will say, so the example in the Mishnah, if you remember again, the example in the Mishnah was hazov va'azova v'hayoledes shekrivu chatasam va'ashamam b'chutz. Let's say they offered up ultimately their chatas and their asham before the prescribed time outside of the Beis HaMikdash. They will be pater. Reb Shimon says they'll be chayiv, but the Rabbanan say they'll be pater. So the Gemara says, "V'hani b'nei Hashem oslinu." I don't understand. Do these people, specifically again about say the zava, the yoledes, do they go ahead and offer up an asham? They don't. To which the Gemara says, "Amar Zeiri tani mitzora ba'ader." So Rabbi says Zeiri says include mitzora in that list. So the mitzora will in fact go ahead and offer up an asham. Next. Olos and ushlamehen, but I will say ultimately again, if they offer up their olos and their shlamim, ultimately again they will be chayiv. So I will say asks the Gemara again, V'hani b'nei shlamim ninu. Do these people are they chayiv for shlamim? Amar Rav Sheshes tani nazir. Ultimately include nazir in the list. So I will say the Gemara just makes an important statement. The ziiri kavua tanai. I will say ziiri's addition of the mitzora was included in the Mishnah. So we'll say this is actually very interesting. That's why the Mishnah actually reads Mitzora. However, the Rav Sheshes lo kavu atanai. But I will say Rav Sheshes' addition of Nazir was not included in the Mishnah. Amr B'chilki Bar Tuvi. So we'll say one more piece. Amr B'chilki Bar Tuvi said as follows: Lo shana. We'll say now, and we said according to the Rabbanon that if you offer up a asham that is mechusar zman, if you offer it up bachutz, you will not be chayiv. So we'll say, for example, this is according to the Rabbanan now. If a zav or a zava, or a shaman or mitzora, offers up his asham outside of the Beis HaMikdash before the prescribed time, he will not be chayiv. So when do we say that if you offer up an asham that is mechusar zman outside of the Beis HaMikdash, you won't be chayiv? When is that? So lo shana elo l'shmo. We'll say that's only if you offer it up Lishmo. We'll say Lishmo means what? Lishmo means what? Lishmo means ultimately again as an asham. Why Rabbi say? Because remember again, in the view of the Rabbanon, when are you chai for shchutei chutz? When are you chai for shchutei chutz? Only when? When the carbon could have been offered up inside the Beis HaMikdash in the same way. But for example, if the carbon can't be offered up in the Beis HaMikdash, for example, a premature asham, when I say premature asham, meaning a person is a mitzora, it's not yet the time for them to bring the purification karbanos. Therefore, again, it's unfit inside. If it's unfit inside, it's unfit outside. And therefore, again, if it's unfit outside, or if it's unfit inside, if you did it outside, you will be pater for shchutei chutz. When is that true? Lo shana ela lishmo. We'll say that's only if you offered it up outside the shem asham. Aval shelo lishmo. Rabbi say if you offered it up ultimately again outside of the Beis HaMikdash, ultimately again shelo lishmo, you will be chayiv. We'll say now why will you be chayiv? Look at Rashi. Ela l'shmo, I should say shelo l'shmo. Rashi says kigon l'shem ola. So we'll say, for example, if you offered it up outside the Beis Hamikdash, not as an asham, but shelo l'shmo, you offered it up as an ola, then what? You will be chayiv. Why will you be chayiv for that, Rabbi? Hoil v'roi shelo l'shmo bifnim. We'll say, so for example, so watch this. Watch this. Well, it's very important. If the Mitzora offers up his asham, let's say again, he's not supposed to bring the asham for another 2 days, but he's supposed to bring the asham on Tuesday, but he brings the asham on Sunday, and he offers it up b'chutz l'shem asham. Is he chayiv? Is he chayiv? No. Why? Why? Very simple level, because again, I will say, because halacha l'maisa, that asham cannot be offered up inside the base. Remember, this is in the view of the Rabbanon. Because again, that asham cannot be offered up inside the Beis Hamikdash. If it can't be offered up inside the Beis Hamikdash, you're not chai for shchutei chutz. But let's say, he took that same asham and he offered it up l'shem ola. He offered it up outside the Beis Hamikdash l'shem ola. Is he chai for shchutei chutz? And the answer is yes. Why? Because I will say that same asham, if he were to offer it up l'shem ola inside the Beis Hamikdash, would be a valid carbon, because inside the Beis Hamikdash it would be valid l'shem ola. Therefore, it's valid l'shem ola as shchutei chutz as well. When I say valid l'shem ola shchutei, meaning or to be chayiv for shchutei chutz if he offers it up l'shem ola. So the Gemara says 1 second. If that's the case, ihachi l'shmo nami nechayiv, however l'shelo l'shmo bifnim. If that's he says, Gemara, I don't understand. Even if he offers it up l'shem asham outside, he should still be chayiv for shchutei chutz. Why? Because technically that animal could have been offered up shelo lishmo inside the Beis Hamikdash. To which the Gemara says no, by Akira. Because we'll say halacha l'maisa, in order for an asham to be offered up, for example, l'shem shlamim, requires Akira. We'll say, what does Akira mean? Akira means a sacrificial uprooting, or an uprooting of one sacrificial identity and replacing it with another. In other words, in order for a carbon to be kasher shelo lishmor abosai, there has to be an active kavana to uproot its identity, in this case as an asham, and offer it up as a shlamim. Without that active uprooting, the carbon remains an asham, and therefore, if offered up inside before the time of its chiyuv, it is not a bona fide carbon, and therefore, if done outside without that akira, it also will not be chai for shchuti chas. So let's just finish this up. Maskif, just 3 more lines. Maskif Rav Huna. So Rav Huna says, I don't understand. V'chi yesh lecha davar she'eno kasher l'shmo, v'kasher shel l'shmo. Listen to this. So Rav Huna asks a very interesting question. Is there such a thing as a carbon that if you offer it up l'shmo, it's not going to be kosher, but if you offer it up shelo l'shmo, it will be kosher? Or as I will say, you hear the great anomaly in this case? It's right, the Masorah is supposed to bring his asham on Tuesday. He brings it on Sunday. So let me get this straight. If he offers it up l'shmo, right, for the sake of asham, then what? Then what? It's potter, right? Remember, I was about to say, it's meaning it's nothing and it's potter. If you offered it up inside, it's invalid, and if he offers it up outside, he's potter for shchutei chutz. Yet the same carbon, if he offers it up shelo lishmo, meaning l'shem shlamim, will be a valid carbon inside, and you will be chai for shchutei chutz outside. The Gemara just says, what an incredible anomaly, right? Is there such a thing as something which, if offered up l'shmo, you're going to be pater, but shelo l'shmo, you're going to be chayiv? Or I should say differently, if offered up shelo l'shmo, it's kosher, and shmo, it's not kosher. To which the Gemara says, "V'chiyesh chadavar she'eno kosher l'shmo, v'kosher l'shmo." Gemara says, actually yes. V'lo, I'll give you a perfect case. Hare, top of Kuf Tesvav. Hare Pesach. We'll say Karan Pesach is the paradigmatic example of this. Why? We'll say if you offer up a Karban Pesach on any day other than Erev Pesach after Chatzos, we'll say what's the status of that Karban? Eino kosher. Yet, Pesach b'shar Mos Hashana the Eino kosher l'shmo, the kosher shelo l'shmo. We'll say, yet amazingly enough, what? Karban Pesach is a perfect example. If you offer it up on any other day of the year other than Karban Pesach, lishmo, it is an invalid carbon. Yet, if you offer it up shelo lishmo, we'll say, what's its status? It's kosher. It's kosher as what? It's kosher as a shlamim. So yes, you do see examples of things which are offered, if offered up lishmo, will be possible, or not kosher, I should say. But if she offered up shelo lishmo, ultimately it'll be kosher. To which the Gemara says, no. Pesach is not a good example. I'll tell you why. Pesach b'shar imos hashana shlamim. We'll say The way the actual mechanics of Pesach, Rabbosai, is that Pesach itself is a carbon shlamim. Just the difference is on Erev Pesach it's called the Pesach, but the rest of the year, if you offer up a Pesach, what is that? By definition, that is a shlamim. So Pesach is not the good example. Therefore, Rabbosai, the Gemara kind of ends off with the question. Ultimately, again, discussing. Is there such? See what the Gemara is introducing us to is this concept that you could have a carbon, which if you offer it up lishmo, will not be kosher inside and will not be in violation of shchutei chutz outside, but yet shalom lishmo will be valid inside and will be chai for shchutei chutz outside. The paradigmatic example of that is the Metzora who offers up his premature asham. If he offers it up l'shem asham, it's invalid inside and not shchutei chutz outside. Yet if he offers it up l'shem shlamim, it's a valid carbon inside, shchutei chutz outside. To which the Gemara ends off. Essentially, the discussion is we can't wrap our head around this idea. There's something that if offered up lishmo will not be kosher, but shelo lishmo will be kosher. And Mirat Hashem will continue to grapple with this tomorrow.